think Sade, but she's gonna be a little late. Hopefully she has the link. I might.
Okay.
Aaron was having trouble getting out of a meeting that he didn't think was happening tonight. And so I can't answer for him. And certainly he has a lot of expertise that I think we want to hear from. I think we'd want to hear from him. So I don't know what that's going to mean for this meeting.
In that case, I would say, since Suzie, I recall you had something double booked for tonight. So in that case, I would say if the other folks on the call don't mind, let's kick this to our next meeting because we have a really full agenda either way. And then we can reconvene and have this discussion, at our next meeting if other folks on the call are okay with that. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I am fine with that. I couldn't find the mute button.
No objection here.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang for 1 second and just see if I can hear back from Aaron to see if he's definitely made a decision.
Right. He had, yeah, right. He has another volunteer event that he has a commitment for, and he thought it was over with, but actually, it got extended for 2 weeks, so he kind of got thrown into it. And really, my bad. I apologize that I didn't send you another reminder this weekend. I've been just crazy with life and work, and
I wouldn't have seen it. Don't worry.
Okay, I live on a 24-hour schedule, really. So, in any event, I don't know, Suzie, if you are prepared to speak tonight, or if you would appreciate having a little more time to pull your stuff together, because I know you had another commitment.
I canceled the other meeting just to attend this.
Did.
But here's the background: is I have no information because I was just asked to attend this meeting. I was not given much information at all. And so the way that I understood was that the way that I felt I was coming into this was much more of there were ideas being kicked around and it was my way in,
Yeah. And I'm okay. I think at this point, that's exactly where we're at. There's just been a lot of, talking about the environmental impact of litter in the community has been something that we've talked about in this committee very superficially many times in the past. And I think we just wanted to talk with a few folks locally who have, boots on the ground, who've done some active cleanups around the community. Suzie, I know you're really involved with the Riverkeeper Sweep. So, you could, I was hoping that you could kind of talk a little bit about what kind of trash you're seeing. I think that you and Aaron have different experiences. So Aaron is really, exploring pretty much every street in Ossining and has visited so many parts of the village, different parts of the village. And so he can sort of talk about like point sources and, what's happening, when the trash hits the ground, right? But when the trash gets into the storm drain or the trash, flows down with the water to, the lowest point, which is just, how gravity and trash work together. You sort of have the perspective of what are we seeing when the trash flows down and gets to our waterfront, and what kinds of trash are we seeing? How does that affect the environmental quality? There's been a lot of studies about the effect of a storm drain runoff and water quality in terms of fuel and car fluids, dog waste, pet waste, and how those things can affect the water quality at our waterfront. I'm not sure if the folks on the call subscribe to the River Keepers emails, but recently they sent an email just yesterday or a couple days ago where they talked about water quality along the Hudson River, and the Ossining High School students are involved in water quality testing, long-term water quality testing project, with the eventual hope that that we could open the beach on the waterfront. And this is really, really important to revitalizing our waterfront, which is really critical to the goal of the EAC. Really, one of the central reasons why EACs were even established in New York State, the local waterfront revitalization was, the central core mission of a lot of EACs that were established along in New York State and along the Hudson River. So, litter in Ossining is a multi-layered issue. We all know that it has a lot of different, there's a lot of agreement and a lot of disagreement on how best to manage the trash. But since Aaron's not here to really talk about like street management, which I think would be really interesting in terms of, how to keep it from falling out of people's hands and onto the street, I'm interested in hearing the waterfront perspective. What are we seeing at the waterfront? What kind of trash are we seeing? Where do we think that trash is coming from? How could we, as an environmental advisory committee, support the village to address the sources of the pollution that we're seeing in the waterfront and improve the quality of life and for the people and the creatures that live in the river and by the river and use the river. So I'm just interested, I admit to you, I have not done a river keeper suite. I'm gonna just stand up and admit it. I'm ashamed to say it. I wish that I've done it before. But I have, walked the Sing Sing Kill. I've pulled with my family really bizarre things out of the Sing Sing Kill that is just, God only knows how they got there. But we have several, tributaries in Ossining that flow into the Hudson River, including the Sing Sing Kill. There's the Sparta Kill, and then there's, various unnamed rivers that probably, at one point did have a name, but don't right now for some reason. Maybe we should name them. But I would like to hear from folks who've done the River Keeper Sweep, just to talk about what we're seeing and what your thoughts are, if you have any thoughts on how we could prevent those objects from polluting our waterfront.
Hi, Eric, can I, before you guys get into this, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about here, but there are three new members. I've never met them, and I don't even know if any of them know who I am, let alone the rest of the members. Is it possible for us to just do?
Please, let's
actions?
do that. 100%.
All right. My name is Jaime Martinez. I'm the planning director. So I'm staff. I'm one of the two people that are staff to this board. I represent the planning department, obviously. We're at the operations center off 9A. Yeah, so that's who I am. Next, you want me to guide it, or do you want to guide it, Erica?
I'm Erica. I'm the chair of the EAC. This is my rescue dog who's mildly obsessed with me. I've been on the EAC for about 3 years now. And we got a really great group of folks. I'm really happy to have some new folks join with us, and really excited for a full agenda tonight and moving ahead. So thank you so much to Katie, Victor and Sade. I'm so sorry if I don't know your name, how to say your name, but please introduce yourselves, and we'd love to know more about you.
I guess I'll start. My name is Victor Vividu. I live on Ellis Place. I've been living in Ossining for 15 years and really love the village. And I know Dana for my entirety of being here. And she encouraged me to join. I do bring a pretty good background in environmental knowledge. I have a master's degree in sustainability management, and I worked as an environmental consultant for about 15 years.
Awesome. Welcome. That's great. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it.
Sade?
Everyone hear me?
There you are.
Okay. My name is Sade Takuru. I grew up in Ossining and recently graduated from the University of Pittsburgh. I studied microbiology, but environmental science and sort of environmentalism is something that's always been important to me. I was a part of the inaugural group of TESA, which is the Teatown Environmental Science Academy. And I also served on the town EAC when I was in high school as a high school liaison. So I have background in that, and I'm really interested in getting to know all of you.
Awesome. That's great.
I'm Katie.
I met your brother Nick. I met your brother Nick. Sorry to interrupt, but I met your brother Nick one time at the Sade. I met your brother at a get together with the town EAC when we were trying to like make local connections, and you guys are pretty awesome family. So we're glad to have you. Thank you so much.
This is really an amazing group of people. I'm Katie Alberti. I've lived in Ossining for 29 years as of yesterday. And I live on Lee Avenue at the very edge of the village. I'm an architect, retired right now, and my experience was primarily designing hospitals and healthcare facilities, and worked on a lot of LEED projects. And we've, in sustainability is a very important issue for me. So I was happy to do what I can and join this committee.
Awesome. That's so great. We really could use some knowledge from an architect. I think that's a bit of a knowledge gap on our board. So that's really wonderful. Thank you so much. How about the rest of the folks on the board? Does anyone else want to introduce themselves real quick?
Hi, I'm Kate Schlott. I'm in my first year of my second term on the EAC. I'm finishing up my dissertation at the CUNY Graduate Center in Earth and Environmental Sciences with a specialization in geography. I also got to meet Nick, really fun. And I recently did one of the River Keeper events at Ryder Park, and it was a lot of fun, but we really got to see a lot of what ends up in the streams from other sources, not necessarily right on the river, but it was definitely an interesting and fun day. And we'll talk more about it later.
Awesome. So who else do we have? Who are our old trustees?
Tom Boland. Sorry, Jess. I'm Tom Boland. I have a background in engineering. I'm a civil engineer for New York City Environmental Protection. I work in their dam safety program for the water supply. So I have some stormwater runoff experience. I kind of bring that's the group. And I live here in Ossining, obviously, and we just had our third baby. So we've got a vested interest in the community here and making sure things are good for the little ones growing up.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Erica.
Tom and I both work at DEP. We both work for New York City Environmental Protection. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Okay, I'll go. I am Jessica Hewlett. This is my second year on the EAC. I've lived in Ossining for about 6 years. I live on Tompkins Avenue. Professionally, I'm a writer, editor, and digital marketing consultant. And I have no specific environmental expertise like everyone else, but I do have a lot of passion and a lot of concern. And I've been sort of learning on the job and loving every minute of it.
And bringing a lot to the table. It's really important that we have folks to help us think outside the box. So it's been really, we have a really good group here right now. How about Leilani? Is Leilani on tonight?
She's not.
Okay.
We have
one more
Stuart.
Sorry?
We have Stuart. I don't know if he wants to say hi.
Stuart?
I'm sorry, I was eating an apple. Hi, I'm Stuart Kahan. I'm the Village's Corporation Counsel. So like Jaime, village staff, but I will be at all of your meetings. So welcome.
I have one little thing, Erica, if that would be okay to say. It's just about the email and the record keeping.
Okay.
It'll take 2 minutes. So to the 3 new members, do you have the village email yet? Do you have access? Have you opened it up? All right. So, you know, the EAC gets to work on lots of great ideas, but a big piece of what the EAC does also is reviewing active projects. Those active projects can on occasion become controversial and are subject to lawsuits. So if you ever do any work related to this board, you should try to make sure that any emails that you send are strictly from your village email, because if you start sending them from your personal phone, your personal email address, that then becomes legally discoverable. So in order to sort of separate your life so that, you know, people can't demand to see your text messages from your personal phone, just make sure that all the work that you do is either done, you know, via email and off of your own personal phone to just prevent yourself from any headaches like that. We've had a recent case, I think Stuart had to send out telling people that if there are any, you know, text messages on these projects to please, you know, get access to. So it's just one of those things that I'm assuming all 3 of you are new to government boards, or at least somewhat new to this type of a board. So just to be mindful, and please do use your official email whenever sending messages or emails in regards to official business. That's it. Any questions about that piece? Okay, then I'll shut up now. Thank you.
So I would assume at this point that Aaron hasn't been able to find a way to find someone to cover him for his other responsibility.
I don't know. He said he was going to connect with us, but I haven't seen anything, and it's already a half an hour.
Okay.
So I'm confused though. Do you want to table the whole discussion?
Let's table it. Let's table it. And then we could talk a little more. So I'm sorry to have taken up your time, Suzie.
Nope, it's not your fault.
But I will make sure to be more on top of it for next meeting, and, you know, send you guys reminders and everything. So
No, you don't need to do that. It just was a nutty time when Rika was asking me, and she was asking me via text. So I just didn't have it in front of my face. And when I agreed to it, it's really—
That was me who asked you. It's just that
No, she, well, maybe perhaps, but oh, that's right. Oh my God.
Because my email looks like
I keep
it has
doing
the
that
name
with the
Rika on
Rika
it.
thing.
Yeah. But we'll switch to Jaime's. We'll follow Jaime's rules. I'll send you official village email. It's an important record keeping reminder from him. It is, you know, I have to admit that I have been at times irresponsible about using my village email only because I can't pop it to my personal email, and I often forget to check it. But I'm trying to make myself reminders, and so I will send you like official information from my email so we have a nice clean record moving forward, and I will make sure that you know about the next meeting in July.
Do you have a date for that next meeting, just so I can—
It's always the first Tuesday.
Okay.
Always the first. All our EAC meetings are the first Tuesday of the month at 7:30.
Okay, so your next meeting is the 6th.
Correct.
Okay. The only thing I would say is, and thank you for kind of the introduction about the things you were talking about. What I might suggest, if you haven't been able to do it yet, is see if you can gather information. Maybe John Zeltzman can give it to you about the work that was done. You know, there's mixed feelings about how effective the whole Big Little Ossining was, but they did, you know, stakeholder engagement things. I get the sense of that. So there may be some stuff that you know you could work off of.
Yeah, okay, maybe it would be important to add him to the conversation. I did see
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I think that
Okay.
would be, I don't know if all the other people that were involved, I think it was Catherine, Karina, and a
Yeah.
couple other people. But
Right.
yeah, we get it from John because he seemed to spearhead all of that. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Just
Thank you.
a quick note of congratulations to Tom, and Tom's baby's name is, Tom, say it.
River,
Oh, wonderful.
River Thomas Boland.
It's beautiful.
Thanks, Susie.
Beautiful.
Anyway, the best to all you guys, and Sade is awesome. Sade and I served together on the town, and I'm so glad that she is continuing to contribute back to our community in more ways than just being here. So I'm a fan. Good job, guys. I'll talk to you guys all in July, and thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so we do have a pretty full agenda, and I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. So the first item on the board, if everyone is okay with talking about that, is the expanding the EAC oversight. So just a little background for the new folks on the board. The EAC is established by the local waterfront revitalization project. Is the P stand for project? In any event, you get the gist. This was a state law, and we have a whole guidebook on how we're supposed to be looking at this. But oddly, the lower waterfront revitalization district is only includes the part of the village that's west from Route 9. So Highland Avenue, basically towards the river, is our area of purview. And historically, there are, of course, there are projects that come up on the east side of the river. And we do get those sometimes at the discretion of the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. Those are two other, I forget what the jurisdiction is for these boards. Can you remind me what the word is legally, Stuart? Those three boards, they have a special name for them that gives them some sort of, maybe Stuart's not here. Anyway, our board and the zoning board.
Sorry, Erica, what was it you were asking me? Go ahead.
So my question was, there's a special legal term for the zoning board, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and the EAC. We have, it's not supervisory board, but we're boards that give, permissions, right?
Well,
Or
those two are,
ZBA
is a quasi judicial board. But those two, planning board and zoning, actually make determinations. You make recommendations.
Determinations and recommendations.
Right.
Correct. Okay. Thank you so much. So
You got it.
those are determination boards and we're recommendation board. So we will often, give advice to the EAC or, not advice, but we will just, give them our feedback on projects that come before us that are west of Route 9. And then on the occasion that there are projects east of Route 9 that we might be interested in, traditionally we are getting those from the, some of those from the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. But it's a kind of an unofficial role. So we've always sort of kicked around the idea of expanding the oversight of the EAC. And if you don't mind talking a little bit about the legal framework briefly about that, Stuart, if that's possible, and what we need to do in order to, you know, kind of make that role official. I know that Jaime in the past has advised us to be careful of what we wish for, because we will not end up seeing a lot of stuff. But I think we should think about, you know, whether it's worth it or not. So if we could just,
Sure.
thank you, Stuart.
Well, your role is expanded a little bit now because of the new wetlands ordinance in the village, which went into effect in January. As you said, Erica, the EAC's role in terms of reviews is specifically set up in the waterfront consistency review chapter of the code in terms of what has to be looked at. In fact, tonight, you're going to be looking at 4 projects for waterfront consistency reviews, more because they deal with grant projects. So we need to have all the environmental issues dealt with. You are Environmental Advisory Council. There is also something known as an Environmental Advisory Commission. The commission, by code, is something that the village would have to adopt if they wanted to have one. It, I believe, and I just have to go back, has slightly more authority than a council does in terms of being able to actually make certain determinations. Again, what the EAC does here is make recommendations to the various boards, but there's more than just that. There is an entire, educational component. I earlier today sent you folks some preliminary plans with regard to, and Katie, this is sort of up your alley, a hospital that is proposed, or it's actually a substance abuse treatment center in the town of Newcastle, a town of Cortland, rather, I apologize, and which appears to impact, or would impact, the Indian Brook Reservoir, which provides a great deal of the water, or the watershed, and could ultimately impact the reservoir, where we get a lot of our water from. And that would be certainly an issue for the EAC to opine on. But right now, the role is, as Erica, you explained, if it's a project that's west of Route 9, it generally comes from the planning board, because that's where the planning board is generally seeing it. On occasion, it will come from the zoning board of appeals, and on rare occasions, still it will come directly from the board of trustees. But it's a matter of, giving recommendations, reviewing plans, and looking at it from perspectives in terms of consistency, and making recommendations as to what, should or should not be in plans. Can the authority of the EAC be broadened to include other areas within the village that might have impacts upon the environment? There's very few areas in the village that I think would not. The answer is yes. And that's a matter of, as Jaime said, be careful what you wish for. But it would be something that could certainly be looked at. It would require a change in legislation to be approved by the Board of Trustees as a local law revision. But it's not outside the realm of something being done. Put it to you that way. So if there were certain things like that, and you wanted to go in that particular way, the best thing would be to just, put your heads together. We look at it and make a presentation to the Board of Trustees. And then ultimately, they'll be the ones who would call for the public hearing. And if it's something they like, it becomes law. And then your portfolio becomes bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if other folks have any strong feelings about this. I mean, I think sometimes there are projects that I see in my, travels through the village that I think, oh, I kind of wish that we got to see that one. And, certainly I could go back and, we could go back and ask to see plans. But sometimes we don't know far enough in advance, our role as an environmental board often seems like it's at the bottom of the engineer's checklist. But it's often the point that needs to be thought about pretty far in advance for construction projects. So I do feel that there is some usefulness in it, but I'm wondering if anybody else has any strong feelings about that.
Well, there's certainly, I think, projects that would benefit from our review that are east of Route 9. So like on a base level, I definitely agree with that. I just think that we should be seeing anything that requires a seeker review, since we're an interested agency, whether it's west of Route 9 or east of Route 9. The west of Route 9 limitation is just for that local waterfront consistency. And if we have, plans to expand on new ordinances like we did with wetlands, I know we're talking about trees, that would pertain to the whole village. So it's not limited to west of Route 9. So I guess I just would want to understand what we're adding to our plate, because we may be taking on projects to the agenda that don't really, having applicants come before us that don't need to. But I'm sure, there probably are projects that are slipping through those that fit those descriptions that I just laid out too. So it may just be increasing communication with the planning board and the board of trustees and getting them to send applicants to us so that we could provide recommendations when a project seems like it would benefit from our review.
That's a really good point, Tom, with the secret review. And that's something that we've talked about before as being the trigger. I'm not sure if we are seeing everything that triggers a secret review or not. Probably we're seeing a lot of it, but maybe we should have some sort of checklist that we send to the other boards. Would that be helpful? And if we said, we would like to see projects that, trigger secret review, or tree cutting is involved. We have like a list of triggers.
And things are.
Can you clarify a little bit how the seeker piece of that works now? So anything that's considered a type 2 action is considered kind of a minimal, and it's been deemed by the state to not have an environmental impact. So anything that is classified as a type 2 is not coming to you, whether it's on the east or west side of the area. Now, there are a couple of projects right now that are sitting with the planning board that are not ready to go, and that's why they're not here yet. But they have to prepare, in one instance, there's going to be a wetlands review. It's right on the Sing Sing Kill. They're going to be doing a subdivision, and they're planning on putting a 2-family house backing up onto the Sing Sing Kill. They don't have any materials to submit to you or to the planning board for that matter on that yet, so it hasn't come to you. There's another project that is backing up to the OCA, and it is including some subdivision as well. It's because of subdivision has to go through seeker. It's also going to be coming to the EAC, and part of our process internally is trying to tell them, hey, look, these are some issues that you're going to have to address. They're going to come up. So they're warned about the types of problems they're going to see at the EAC, but that is also going to have to come to the EAC. These are pretty significant projects, I think, for the village. The part of the reason why you haven't really seen anything lately is there really hadn't been a lot of projects lately. I know it might feel like there's a ton of things going on, but a lot of the stuff that comes in front of the boards really is like looking at the siding of a house and things like that. So I do want to assure you, even though there hasn't been much coming in over the past 4 or 5 months, it really doesn't have to do with the fact that there's all these big things happening. There's some very big projects which are going to come. Obviously, the DPW is the largest of those projects, and that could be coming to you as early as next month, and those other projects as well. So it's really just kind of been a waiting game, and so. I think your point is well taken. If it's an unlisted action or type 1 action, which is the kind of stuff that would get shifted over to the EAC, talking about removing the dividing line with Route 9, with 9 or whatever, might make sense, right? But as Stuart mentioned, and I said originally, be careful what you wish for. Although there's not a lot, there hasn't been a lot missed just yet.
Yeah, and I agree. We don't want, first of all, we don't want to waste, the citizens' time by having them come before us if they don't need to, because we don't want to be, certainly don't want to be a burden to the community, but we also don't want to, use our time poorly either by reviewing, siding changes. So maybe if we can all agree on some criteria and we send a list to those other two boards saying, hey, we would like to see projects where there's tree cutting, where there's land clearing, when there's any disturbance, when you're expanding the footprint or building a new building. That's land clearing, and that's new impervious surface, and that's, interesting to us as an environmental board. And we have an architect, so we could sort of, I think it would be interesting where there's any new construction. That could be a trigger for us too, where there's, new construction on raw land. That's interesting. I'm thinking of the project by Valvoline. I'm thinking of the project by Roosevelt Square, by Ossining Pizza over there. Those are totally new constructions. And I think, as a board, we might have been interested to see those and have, look at them with an environmental eye. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So maybe I misunderstood, Jaime. Are we not seeing type 1 listed actions that are east of Route 9 right now? I thought we were.
Yeah, you are seeing type 1 and you're seeing unlisted. You are not seeing type 2. That's the way it's written. So you're not seeing type 2, but type 2 includes everything from writing a report to getting siding to, repaving your sidewalk or things of that nature. They tend to be things that the state is very familiar with. There's defined boxes that you have to fall within, and they're already recognized as like not having the potential to have an environmental impact. So,
Right. So I think that's good, though. I don't think we want to change that.
No, you don't want to start seeing
We
type
don't
2.
want to see type 2. We don't want to see type 2. But so but those projects that I mentioned earlier, those ones are like,
The ones you mentioned?
yeah.
Ones. So the bigger ones, what we've said in the past, and this is just practice over the past year, is that if we get an unlisted action or we get a type 1 action, then it would come in front of you. And I think that in one instance, we had one situation where that happened and we did that. So it came in front of me. But there just hasn't been that many non-type 2 actions on this side. Keep in mind that there's really a lot more going on the west side of 9 than there is on the east side. Just it's a makeup of the style and design of houses. The Croton Avenue project, 70 Croton Avenue, if it was starting today from scratch from a vacant land, then they'd be going through a rezoning, and that rezoning would have kind of kicked that over to the EAC to say, hey, EAC, can you provide some commentary on this rezoning? It would have been listed most likely as an unlisted action. And so under our current practice, we would have looked at, shifting over something like that, bringing it to the EAC. It's a little different. But I think that if from our end, it's like we have to remember for things east of Route 9.
Mm-hmm.
If the code was changed,
Yeah.
It would make it easier to get it to the EAC, because then we would just be following the code. Be like, all right, every time we do our code check, we don't have to remember that our sort of internal practice is to send it up.
Yeah.
The only difference is that you would not be providing commentary based off of like an LWRP review. It would have to be a different set of criteria that you're trying to look at.
Right.
You'd want to
Yes.
figure out what is that criteria that you're trying to examine because the LWRP does not extend. So you would not be able to change the boundaries of the LWRP. So your function east of Route 9 would have to be somewhat different. And your function west of Route 9, I think, is, you know, more expansive than the code actually calls for. The code calls for you to read those coastal assessment forms and make your decision. Your commentary tends to be a little broader than that. So you just have to figure out, what are you looking at on the east side?
So just to, because I'm new to this, so if I heard you right, we have statutory authority, if that's the right word, by code west of Route 9 to review based on the particular criteria.
Full waterfront revitalization plan.
Right. And then we've been invited to give commentary on broader issues, both west of Route 9 and both east of Route 9 when the projects are type 1 or enlisted. But we don't have a strict set of guidelines to go by. We just kind of use our best judgment.
Right. Like there was an instance for the 92 South Highland, right? They were mostly just removing material, or they're proposing to remove materials. They're going to do some stormwater stuff, right? And so there's technically LWRP concerns. But there was also discussion about bike racks, which is not necessarily, you know,
In the LWRP.
it's not really.
Yeah.
But it is environmental, and I think it's a good comment, right? So you want to throw that in there.
Right.
So there are lots of good comments that may not have to deal with that. And there are issues of stormwater, frankly, infiltration, things like that you could make about any place where you're sort of bringing in new stuff. I mean, I could say at least internally from the planning side, I think that for me, sitting in these meetings has a really big impact on how I speak to people coming and proposing stuff. Now we're starting to say to them, hey, you need to use porous pavers, you need to add more native trees, you know, you need to, it certainly has educated, I think, our discussions. And so if you're looking to try to find a way to make that formal, I mean, I think that there's a lot of merit to that, so.
Okay. I don't know if it's worth it to kind of have someone pursue this, you know, like, so just to kind of backtrack for a minute, the triggers that I see would be useful for us as a council to be, you know, with the projects that we would like to be seeing is, as we mentioned, a type 1 SECRA. Do other folks think it would be useful? I don't want to be speaking out of turn here, but do other folks think it would be useful for us to see projects where there's any sort of land clearing? You know, where there's something that's built where there was nothing built before. I mean, I think it's, you know, adding any sort of impervious surface is always sort of interesting, but maybe I'm just being overzealous.
Well,
I don't like to see I like to see tree cutting whenever there's any tree cutting. I think that's interesting to us too.
well, so you don't have to go to the planning board for, if you wanted to build a one-family home in a one-family district. And you don't have to go to the planning board if you want to build a two-family home in a two-family district. So you wouldn't have to go to the planning board. You have to go to the Board of Architectural Review for those items, but you wouldn't have to go to the planning board. So to require a recommendation, that recommendation really wouldn't have anywhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
Those instances. So I would say that you would probably want to narrow it to things that are not as of right. Because anything that's already as of right, that's permitted, that you just go pull a permit for, outside of some sort of like review for like architectural review, I don't know how you'd be able to apply. Like, who would you go tell, hey,
Well, don't they have to apply to cut a tree? Don't they have to get a permit if they want to cut trees, for example?
Well, are you talking, Erica, as part of a site plan, or are you talking if someone just wants to take a tree down? Because yes, there is a permit process, but if it's just a matter of taking a tree down, you go to the building department, you get the permit. You know, there may be an arborist review, but you know, that's what it is. There's no board that reviews it.
Are there two separate processes for cutting a tree if you're doing site?
No,
if
you
you're
still
doing-
have to get a permit, but it's going to be on the plans.
Yeah.
I see.
Like,
It's going to be on
those
the plans.
plans will have the
They'll
existing
mark out
trees.
which trees they're taking down and what they're going to be putting up. But if someone lives in a private home and wants to take, you know, 1 or 2 trees down, that's basically an application to the building inspector. There, as I said, they may send the arborist out, and then they'll get a permit.
Okay. Okay.
Stuart, question, what would it take to formally expand the sphere of influence of the EAC? A resolution or something?
Local law change, Trustee Wood.
Okay. Well, it seems like, for example, that Croton Avenue where the nursery used to be is a brownfield. I understand they did some borings and then they put the property on the market, right? But, you know, that seems like a good thing for the EAC to, you know, review if that ever comes to anything. You know, so there are, you know, I definitely think it's, as long as it doesn't become too much work for the EAC, you know, it could be
Yeah.
a lot.
That's a good example. I mean, what that particular project, as an example, would that be within the courtesy purview that you were talking about?
Probably, yeah. So it currently it doesn't have any approval. So in order for them to build something there, they're gonna have to do they're gonna have to go through an approval process. So if they do go through an approval process and they put up what is most likely to come, which is a multi-story building, it's gonna have a conditional use permit attached to it. It's gonna have some stormwater, you know, it's gonna need a SWIP. And so I don't know if it would be a type 2 or if it's unlisted. My feeling, I don't know, Stuart, what do you think? It's probably likely to end up in an unlisted action.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
You know, and if it ends up in an unlisted action, it's going to get sent to the EAC anyway. But again, that's a courtesy. So it's not anything formal. And so if the desire is to make it a formal part of the process, it becomes easier to remember. It certainly carries the weight over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think
Well,
there is
I
some
think-
use. Sorry.
Sorry,
Please
Eric,
go.
I was just going to say at a minimum, I think it sounds like it's worth making what is right now happening out of courtesy a formal code requirement. So that we would see all of, you know, just so we would always see the type 1 and unlisted actions, and we wouldn't be relying on someone to remember to ask. And the applicant would know that ahead of time, that it would be coming to us.
So in that case, Stuart, I could just write a letter and say, you know, the EAC is, could I just write a letter and
You can write a
summarize
letter.
this conversation?
I just want you folks to, and I think it's fine. You're a few months away. I mean,
Mhm.
I have 5 or 6 local laws that clearly have to come first. Plus
Okay,
the police reform, plus the comprehensive plan. So
got it, got
you're
it.
probably into fall before
Okay.
we can really start. But if you want to send a letter to the BOT to start the process rolling, absolutely. I have no
Okay.
problem with that. I'm just sort of letting you know, time-wise, we're probably looking mid to late fall of this year for something to be presented.
Understood.
And we shouldn't really be missing anything anyway, Stuart, you know, the next few months while we're waiting for even if it took a year. You know,
We know that from a courtesy perspective, it's going to come over anyway. And as Jaime said, you know, there are things in the pipeline, but nothing that has resulted in actual applications in yet. So there's nothing to review yet. It's just, you know, people come in and say, well, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to do that. But until they actually submit a plan with an application and a fee, it's a lot of talk. But yeah, I think it is a very good idea to formalize it, and you know, we can certainly go in that direction.
Something else that Honey was talking about piqued my interest. probably especially because I'm new to this group, is perhaps trying to establish what criteria we would be viewing it against. And again, because I'm new and I'm an architect, I'm trying to feel my way around what the purview of this group is as opposed to the other boards. And I think maybe if we spend a little time, not tonight, but as this moves forward, thinking about what the criteria would be for this new flavor of project.
That's fine.
Yeah, Katie, that's what I was going to recommend as well, that maybe take the next month or so, we can brainstorm some ideas and we can email each other and start getting that in order. Because I think that is something that when we present this proposal, we would want to have that all sorted so that it just rolls faster.
Okay, so just to get the ball rolling, I will send an email with just a couple of things that we talked about that would trigger our involvement, circulate it to the council, and then we can have an email discussion and, you know, I'll draw up a letter once we finalize that. And, you know, as time permits, we can work on that with the, you know, with the folks with Stuart and the folks the BOT. Good. Thank you. Let's keep going. I don't want to hold everyone up. So the next business of the board is the CDBG village projects. Is it right for us to start with that, Jaime?
Yes. Jaime, you've got that for you?
I do, yeah.
And folks, just a little background, CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grants. This is for the period of 2022 to 2024. As Jaime will explain, it is 4 separate applications by the village for 4 different projects. It's a little time sensitive, so we're going to ask you to consider this tonight. The Board of Trustees will be voting on the 16th of June with regard to consistency. So your review tonight and your letter will have to be before that. And that's all because these applications must be submitted to the county no later than June 25th. Very short turnarounds and things like that. So Jaime, I'll let you carry it away with regard to the 4 projects.
So I'm trying to get this to expand here. So there are 2 things. There's 2 playground replacements, and then there's 2 phases of the Spring Street sidewalk replacement. So we're just gonna go through these one at a time. The first one is they're gonna remove and replace an existing playground in Nelson City Park. The new playground will incorporate inclusive equipment for children with mobility and sensory constraints. They'll also be doing some work on a sidewalk to make sure that people with physical disabilities can access the playground and actually get there. So it's basically tearing down a thing and adding something. It's I don't have like a picture of the playgrounds because I don't know if they've actually bid it out yet, but they have the general specs of what they're going to do. Any questions?
No. So there's no plans yet. There's no. Okay.
No, there's
So
no
what-
plans. And I think
So we're submitting this
numbers.
to get the funding. This is part of the grant process,
Correct.
right? Okay, got it. All right, thank you. This looks great.
So the next one I'll open up is the same thing, except this one's in the Old Croton Aqueduct, and it's over by, it's in between Ann Street and North Malcolm Street. There's also going to be some tree pruning, some control of invasive species, landscaping, and improvements to a staircase.
If some of you people have walked on the aqueduct, you will see between these 2 streets, there is now some old play equipment. None of us know exactly when it got there or who actually put it there, but this will put in new play equipment. It will fix sort of the amphitheater set up there, which is with the railroad ties, and will improve the area. The state is pleased to have it done as well. So, and it would be just another nice little playground area within the village, and this one right along the aqueduct.
I live right down the block from it, and I would love to have that done too. It is actually, if the playground was a little better, it's a really cool area with the way that they have the little, like a small,
Yep.
but as you described it, like an amphitheater kind of setup going on. It's really, it's completely underutilized. I never see anybody actually using that playground. We used it a few times before COVID had shut everything down. But since then, I haven't really seen anyone using it, and it would be a really great thing to do.
So are you guys looking for a letter of support for these?
What we're looking for, Erica, would be essentially that you find that these 4 projects, and Jaime will describe the next 2, are essentially consistent with the village's LWRP. And we would put that, if that's okay, then the Board of Trustees would adopt the consistency finding, and that would be part of the application process. The county, which is the one through whom we make the applications, has made it very clear that the environmental nature of these projects is very important to the county, particularly for the application process. So we want to make sure that all T's are crossed and all I's are dotted. So that's what we'll be looking for the EAC, is essentially a recommendation with regard to consistency.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and so the next 2, I'm not even gonna pull up because it's just, they're gonna pull out the sidewalk on one side of the street in Spring Street, and then they're gonna replace it with new sidewalks and new curb cuts.
And this is effectively from Scarborough Manor all the way to Broad. Is it to Broad, I think?
It's the Broad, yeah.
And what it's to be, folks, is it's actually 2 projects. Half will be done, half I think would be done in 2022, and I think the other in 2023. The county thought it would be better if we split the 2 things up. But it will put in new sidewalks, new ADA accessible ramps, and basically improve that whole area, essentially almost the full length of Spring Street, where there's already been some other work done. But this is something we hope that the county will be happy to pay for.
Why specifically Spring Street?
Gotta pick a place.
Gotta pick a place. Okay.
Yep, so I mean, you can pick Spring Street or State Street or Broad Street. It has to be in the CDBG area. So odd block, but outside of that criteria, so that's like 90% of the village is low mod. So there are a lot of places that could go.
What does that mean, low mod?
Low mod means that the average household income is low to moderate for Westchester County. So Westchester County average household income for a family of 4 is about $127,000. So in these districts, the average household income is anywhere, from $80-something thousand down.
And that's the area that's the criteria to qualify for the block grant. For
the CDBG, there's different criteria.
Got it.
One of the criteria that you can use to qualify for CDBG funding is to be in a low mod area. You can also help low mod clientele, or you can remove slum and blight. So this kind of funding would be to serve the purpose of low mod area.
I noticed that they were just on the subject of accessibility, piggybacking on that idea. I noticed that they were placing a lot of the telephone poles on Croton Avenue and pushing them back off the sidewalk, which, bravo, because imagine navigating that sidewalk in a wheelchair. Will that type of thing be addressed? I'm not sure if Spring Street has like obstacles like that for folks that are, have mobility issues. But is that the type of thing that gets addressed, or is it just a tear out and replace? Because those telephone poles right smack dab in the middle of the sidewalk is an issue.
So they're required to put in curb cuts that are ADA accessible. Maybe Stuart, I don't know about the light poles.
No, Erica, I don't think it's part of it because that's really the utility companies and they're not part of the grant process. It does create, as you're right, some anomalous situations where you put in a brand new sidewalk and you got a smack dab, you got a telephone pole. Listen, we have issues with Con Ed on God knows how many things, and I'm not saying these are Con Ed poles. We repave an entire length of roadway, and then Con Ed comes in and goes, oh, by the way, we're going to redo the gas line, so we're going to road up again. So I believe that the selection process in part also involved obviously discussions from the village manager, I'm sure discussions from the village engineer, but I don't think it will involve necessarily moving poles. It is something that we bring to the utilities' attention, particularly when it's very narrow. If some of you have tried to walk on parts of Westerly Road down near Chattamuck in that area, you can barely get by on the sidewalk. And you got to sort of shimmy. So it is something we're aware of, but in large part, we have to see if the utilities are going to do something.
So it's basically like grading and flattening, that's the accessibility facet of the work.
Right, that's right. In terms of new, the ramps into the street and things like that, that's what I understand the work with. That's part of the accessibility part of it, yes.
Okay, that sounds great. So do you need us to send you an email
That would be great. That's all I
Okay.
need from you. And then, as I said, the plan is on the 16th, we'll present this to the Board of Trustees, which will also seek authorization to submit the 4 applications, and then they'll be out the door.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. So we're skipping letter B for new business. And then because we don't have all the speakers today, but the letter C was discussion of the village tree ordinance. So just to give folks a little bit of background, there's been some chatter on with, actually Suzie, who was on the call earlier, had sent an email to a couple of folks in the village asking about what our tree policy was because she saw a number of large trees coming down. In my work with DEP, I work with a lot of municipalities in Westchester County, and I sort of get to understand a little bit. I get a very shallow understanding of their tree policies, and I think it could be a worthwhile project for us as a board to see what other municipalities in the area are, what their tree cutting policy is, what their tree replacement is. I've come across various policies and I haven't had a deep dive in any of them, but I know that some municipalities require replacement of 1-to-1. If you cut down one tree, you have to plant one tree. Some say if you cut down one tree, you have to plant 2 trees. Some municipalities have allowances. If the tree is an invasive species, you don't have to do a replacement, or you only have to replace it with 1 tree instead of 2 trees. So there's all these different permutations of tree policy around Westchester. Some use a system called DBH. That's an acronym that stands for diameter at breast height. So basically, at the breast height of a 6-foot man, at about 4 feet, you would take the diameter of the tree, and then the village or town or municipality would want you to replace with trees equaling that diameter at breast height. So say you have, a 14-inch diameter tree, they want you to replace with, and usually when you're planting new saplings, they're 1 to 2 inches in diameter. So they're asking you to do some proportion of that DBH. So there's all these different permutations out there. And I think it would be worthwhile. There's a lot of talk about, tree equity at the state level. There's, this is a term that's catching on more in the environmental field. Trees do provide such a tremendous quality of life improvement. especially in, urbanized village settings like Ossining. And I think we've had a lot of discussion about this internally with the folks that were on the board, when we've seen projects come before, come to us in the past. And I think it's an interesting project that I would like to see the group pursue. And I would love it if there's anyone who is, feels passionate about this and they want to, do a quick comparison between the Ossining's tree policy and other municipalities. I know Bedford has a really strong tree policy. So I'm looking for volunteers. So if anyone you don't have to answer now, but if you want to think it over, I would really appreciate having someone help me out with this. If you're interested in it, I do think it's not a complicated thing to look into. It will take, a couple hours. I don't think it would, take more than, 5 hours over the course of a month. So if anybody is interested in looking into this and maybe coming up with some recommendations on how we could expand, or maybe it's fine, our tree policy, but if anyone can come up with ways they think that our tree policy could possibly be improved, I would really appreciate that help. So I'm not going to hold anyone's feet to the fire just yet.
Erica, I'd be happy to take this on.
Awesome. I was thinking it'd be great for you. I didn't want to volunteer you, Jessica, but I was like, Jessica will be so good on this. Great. So Stuart sent me a copy of the village's tree policy. I'll just shoot that over to you. I'm sure you could find it if you look for it, but it's probably easier if I just shoot it forward to you. And then you and I could take it to the sideline if you want, and have a conversation through our village email, of course, to discuss this.
And
Thank you so much.
Finding the tree ordinances of other Westchester municipalities is really a breeze. If you go to any go to the Croton site. Generally, each one of those municipalities has a drop down that says village code. Click on that, it takes you to what's called municipal code. They're all on that. And if you simply look, most of them have a specific chapter on trees, and you'll be able to get that, and you can download it, and you can do so. You can do, if you have any issue with that, let me know. And but that they usually have all that stuff. Interestingly enough, what we get with regard to trees, not as much from the site plan review, but more from just people who have homes, they just cut down a lot of trees, and we write, it's very difficult because you write the violation, unfortunately, after the fact. But we also get a lot of people, his branches are coming over my house, and particularly with the way the weather has been, you get a lot of complaints, that trees are falling, onto people's properties. We have a lot of village trees that are falling onto other people's properties. So that comes up quite a lot. You also have people who, frankly, have trees that are dead, doing damage, but refuse to remove the tree. So then you have a whole other issue. But what you do find with regard to site plans in particular is they will list what trees are there and what they intend to take out and what they intend to put in, but sometimes there's a big difference between what they intend and what actually ultimately shows up. So that is something that you want to look at, and that's something that can tie back into site plan review as compared to just the tree ordinance, because they said the tree ordinance here is for any type of tree removal. If there's clear cutting, if there's if you're on a steep slope, we do specifically deal with that in the tree ordinance here. We do have an arborist who will go out and check the trees and gives us reports on things that are going on. But if you have any questions, or Jessica, finding any of those ordinances, let me know so I can get them for you without a problem.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Stuart, not on the agenda, but you did send us an email earlier. Do you want to talk a little bit more about, can we talk a little bit about this
We
hospital
can-
project?
We can talk a little bit about it. You have time to review it because there is no shovel in the ground and there's no permit out. But in a nutshell, the Hudson Wellness Center, which proposes, I think, a 90-plus bed inpatient facility for substance abuse, is looking to construct on the site of what was a former hospital on Quaker Ridge Road in the town of Cortland. The address, I believe, is 2106. 75% of the project is in the Indian Brook watershed. We foiled some of the plans with regard to septic systems and things like that, and it appears that at least one, if not two, of the main septic systems that are proposed are within the watershed. There's also going to be obviously a lot more paving walkways. It appears that there are going to be certain dumpsters areas that will be within the watershed. So what I'll be doing is preparing a letter for the mayor and the town supervisor, town of Ossining supervisor, to send to the town of Cortland, essentially saying, we just want to make you, make you aware of, what's going on here. You may already know, you may not, but that there are, issues with regard to this, particularly with regard to the watershed and with regard to potential impact on our reservoir, and just to make Cortland aware. As I said, the Cortland Zoning Board of Appeals initially had determined that this was a facility that was not permitted under the zoning code. That was appealed, well, there was an Article 78 proceeding that was brought in state Supreme Court, and last September, a judge determined that in fact it was a hospital as defined in the town of Cortland code. So they sent it back to the zoning board there to issue the necessary declaration. But there have been other appeals in the meantime. So there's nothing actually out there, but there are plans. There are plans. The plans that I have are from 2019, which are some of the plans that I sent to you folks. I also sent you some of the comments from the water engineer, if you want to call it, or consultant that we use, a company by the name of Arcadis. They do a lot of work with us with regard to the dam, and they'll be very much involved in the Indian Brook water treatment project, which is the new water treatment plant that hopefully will be putting out for bid at the end of this year, with maybe groundbreaking sometime in 2022. So they had certain comments with regard to this. So I just wanted to basically put on your radar that it's out there. And this is different because it's a project from a different municipality and cross-border, but one that could involve the village, and because it involves potentially involves the water supply. There is nothing on that site now. As I said, it is a former hospital. I don't think there's been a hospital there since, I think, the 40s, maybe 50s. But this Hudson Wellness has purchased the property. As I said, I think it's just about 20.1 acres. And they'll be using it for, as I said, the facility that they intend to put in there. There is a citizens group in the area that is very much opposed to this, but thus far they haven't gotten a lot of traction. So it's something that the town supervisor is very interested in here, as I'm sure the mayor is as well. So as I said, we'll be drafting a letter. So I invite you folks to to look at it. If you have any comments, please let me know. There are a few other things that our consultant wanted us to get from the town of Cortland, which we'll try to get. But in the meantime, it's just something that's out there to be aware of.
Can I ask you a question, Stuart?
Sure.
It is defined as a hospital within the town of Cortland code, but it's not a licensed facility by the state of New York Department of Health.
I don't believe, I think the state organization is Oasis. They have not, as far as I know, Katie, I don't know if they've gotten a certificate to build, or if they've even gotten the permit. All the the judge noted is that it is something that the facility they propose is something that would fall within their definition. How far they've gone on the state end to actually get the approval, I don't know.
But it's drug rehab in the sense that they won't be having operating rooms and.
No, it's just, as far as I see, it's drug and substance abuse. That's it. That's correct.
And Stuart, even if it's in our watershed, there's no legal framework that gives us any sort of legal power in our watershed if it's outside of the boundaries of the village or town.
Actually, not right now. There is, I believe, an Indian Brook watershed compact where they're working on things like that to sort of deal with those very issues. We had something similar. Some of you may remember the Sunshine Home, which is in Newcastle. And there was an issue there, although our own engineers felt that it was not really much of an issue to the watershed. But similarly there, now that's an inpatient facility for severely ill children, similar to some extent to Burke in Hawthorne. I don't remember how many beds. They ultimately got all their approvals from Newcastle. There was a lot of litigation with that as well. But again, there was a question, would that have any impact there? There was a whole issue that there were underground silver mines that had since been abandoned, and would there be leaching and things like that. But the view of our consultant here is that where the placement of the septic systems is a potential red flag. So that's because, as I said, 75% of the project or the property is within the watershed, 25% is outside the watershed. But in terms of, actual, protection, as you're asking, Erica, unfortunately, not as much as one would like.
And we could be sure that the septic tanks are going to have, pharmaceutical runoff, and whether or not it's hydrologically connected to the reservoir, at least on the surface, it wouldn't be, but underground.
Right.
Yeah, that is a bit of a concern. Okay, so there are no plans.
No,
right
there's no, I did not see anything on any zoning board agendas, except that it was sent back from the court. As I said, the matter is on appeal. But it does not look like, they've granted anything. And obviously it would still need site plan approval from that. And I'm sure that, the Cortland would have to look at it from the water perspective as well. And obviously, because it is a facility that's significantly regulated by the state, there's going to be a state involvement as well. We saw that to some extent with the former Victoria home in the village when they were, doing their expansion. So, but right now, no, there's nothing there. If I hear anything further that something's coming up, I'll let you know right away.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for letting us know about that. I'm interested in learning more about this compact.
I will see what I can find for you. If not, I will check with the assistant village manager, who may have more knowledge on that than
I can tell you all about it.
What?
I sat in on an interview the other day.
Well, then you are the man to ask.
So the way it's effectively, what they're trying to do is create a kind of a special floating zone that would cover the 5 jurisdictions that are within the Indian Brook watershed. So for the village of Ossining, that doesn't represent a whole lot of land. Not much of the village of Ossining is actually in the Indian Brook watershed. It's the neighboring municipalities, Newcastle, town of Ossining, Portland, Yorktown.
Yorktown,
That are
yeah.
more involved in it. So we'll see what happens. We interviewed the only applicant who applied to do this study, and there's supposed to be some public hearings and things like that. It's still being worked out. So the contract hasn't been finalized and worked out, but it looks like we have a consultant.
So the consultant is hired to create the compact, or they're just What's the study?
Yeah, they're to create the zoning overlay and then also work with the municipalities to get the overlay passed. It's gonna be kind of interesting.
Yeah. How confident are we that they have any vested interest in protecting the Indian Brook watershed if they're not consuming water from the Indian Brook Reservoir?
The whole process is being managed by the town of Cortland. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good news,
I don't know.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think it's great. I think that it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know what everybody's appetite is. I don't know what the recommendations are going to be. So I think that, a lot of people might be interested in saying, hey, we need to be worried about, subdivisions. But probably the biggest impact on the watershed is people mowing their lawns and throwing fertilizer down. And so are the zoning recommendations going to say, hey, you got to be careful about the kind of development that you have down there, but be silent on whether people can throw down, nitrogen into their.
Well, technically, Westchester County law prohibits the use of, phosphorus containing fertilizer since 2009. But I tell you, I
You
see
can
so
still get it in
many
the store,
plants.
can't you? I'm pretty sure you can still get it like the local Home Depots.
Yeah, right. And people, they'll pretend every way till Tuesday that they are unaware of that law. I have to remind them of it. Every time I review plans, they always put that in there. You always have to tell them to take it out. It would be interesting for the county to forge ahead with education and outreach on that subject because it is a county law. Just saying. But
Yeah,
that's a
I had heard that law before, but my grass is all brown, so I never really had to worry about nitrogen.
After all that rain, come on.
It's green in the patches where moss is growing. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think that's it for the agenda, unless anyone has anything else they want to bring up. Next time, I think we're going to talk about Kate's GIS project, which I'm really excited. I would really, just for the sake of the new folks on the board, one project that I'm hoping that we can move forward with is working with the Westchester Land Trust to try and see if we could get some outright purchases or conservation easements on some of the very limited undeveloped parcels we have in the village. We did have a woman from the Westchester Land Trust, who I think, Jessica, you that lined that up for us, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Jessica had I think she's the head of the Westchester Land Trust, right?
Yeah.
She came and spoke to us. I had to look it up because I spoke about this at the Board of Trustees meeting, and someone on the Board of Trustees asked me about that. So I looked it up, and it was July 2019. She came and spoke to us, and she seemed really eager to work with us. But one of the criteria they have for actually giving grants sorry, my screen's going dead. For acquiring parcels is that they want to see that we're for real. They don't want us to just come, with a paragraph letter and a book report asking them for funding. They want to see that we have a plan. So, we've been Kate, who's a GIS person, has been working to create an open space inventory for us for a while. That's a huge undertaking. We also have the comprehensive plan in the works. So I think that we could go to the Westchester Land Trust moving forward and see if we can come up with a couple of parcels and move forward with preserving any remaining open space and undeveloped space we have in the village, or some of it at least. So that's a project that I'd like to move forward in the summer and fall.
I'm going to forward an email later tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow, so that everyone can see the open space project, what has been put together. You'll get a chance to look through the file so you can see exactly what we've been working on. This actually has been a 2-year long project. It got delayed because of COVID. But now that things are wrapping up, I think this would be a great next step with everything. So I'll send that around. You guys can take a look. There will be a presentation for it next month.
Awesome. And please, let's make sure we include our new members in the emails. And hopefully, if you guys have any issues accessing your emails, please do, let Jamie Kane know. And she could hook you up with Craig Cooper, who is the IT guy for the village. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a good night, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Glad to meet you all.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Do we need to make a motion to close the meeting or?
Yeah, we have a big idea. Tom, maybe
Well, we got 2 people left. We could still do it, right? I'll make a motion to
I
close.
think we lost our quorum.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.